everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to snow for me. It was gross. I was on vacation last week. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was warm. I want to go back. Anyways, with us today, we have an amazing guest, so I don't have to think about the snow. Welcome, Mercedes Killeen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So where are you visiting us from?
I'm also in Niagara. So yeah, very snowy for sure.
Right? It's gross right now. And foggy.
Yeah, it's quite dark.
Yeah. I just drove my grandson to school. And it was kind of a foggy drive going there.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're going to do our interview and not think about the snow because I hate it.
Sure.
Before we get to that though, do you do anything in the snow? Like, do you enjoy the snow, skiing or any of that crap?
I've never skied or anything. I honestly don't mind the snow. I can't handle the heat. So the snow, like, it's not too bad for me. Like I'll deal with it. Like, because the heat, I just like I can't deal with it. Yeah.
I love the heat. It's the humidity we get here that I have an issue with. The heat,
Yeah.
I'll take heat all day long.
For
It's
sure.
when the humidity comes and now we got issues.
Yeah.
Anyways, tell us a little bit about who Mercedes is.
Yeah, so right now I'm working as a freelance writer, editor, and marketer, but I also have a long kind of history as a poet. I've been doing that since I was pretty young. Poetry was kind of where I got my start, and then now kind of transitioned more into like the freelancing world. Also spent a bit of time in the marketing world. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, so that's what you've done, but who are you?
I'm really passionate about mental health, which is why I'm really excited to be chatting today. It's a big part of what I do. Working to reduce stigma is really important to me. I'm also queer, so that's a really important part of my identity that I try to weave into my writing and my work. So those are, a few things that I'm passionate about. Yeah.
Awesome. So you say queer, and I've had that word come up maybe 2 or 3 times over the last. Guys, did you know that we've almost been doing this show for 3 years? I just looked back. It's been almost 3 years. But in that time, that word has only come up a couple times, and every time it comes up, I always ask the same question because it looks like we're relatively the same age, but back when we were younger, that was a no-no word. Like that was a mean, derogatory word. So tell us what it means to you when you say that you are queer.
Yeah, I think before queer was definitely used as more of a slur. Now I think the community's kind of reclaimed that term and is using it more, as a way to identify yourself. It can sometimes be used as like an umbrella term for the LGBT plus community. It can also be used as an actual like sexual orientation. So for me, I use it as like a label of of my orientation. I used to identify more as like bisexual. But I found over the years, queer is just a little bit more fluid. I found with bisexual, there was kind of a pressure to think of like, do I like both genders 50-50 or, figuring out, maybe, do I identify as a lesbian, like trying to figure that out. Whereas queer is just more like fluid and it's like, I'm not straight. But you don't have to get too specific about like, what exactly, you're interested in. Yeah.
Okay. That actually brings up a good point when you're talking about the bisexual, something that no one else has mentioned, so I've never thought about it before. When you're saying, do I like them 50-50? I've never thought about that when the word has come up before. I guess for me, not having thought about it before, the assumption would just be that it's kind of a 50-50 or this is going to sound weird, but like 100-100. So this is that's a thing that I've heard a lot about relationships because some people say, oh, relationships are 50-50. Well, no, because then you're only putting in 50% effort. Relationships are 100-100, right? You have to put in 100% effort. So I guess my assumption whenever I've heard that word and I've never thought about it too much, but was always that, you like them 100, 100. Like, you like, what do you like?
Mhm.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So that just gives me some food for thought. Like it just, huh, I've never, yeah.
Yeah. You don't really think about it until you're like coming out and then you're trying to figure out who you are and then you're like, I don't really know what I like. And you're just kind of
Yeah.
coming out is a weird process. It's a lot of thinking and trying to figure out what you're interested in. So yeah, I never really thought about it too much either until I was actually coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. Did a lot of people ask you questions about that? Is that why you started thinking about it, or you just wanted to think about it?
I think I just naturally was trying to figure it out, but yeah, people do ask a lot of questions as well with the bisexual thing, and also with the queer label as well. Yeah, people definitely ask questions, so it can also prompt a bit of that like
Hmm.
thinking as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully that is your belief as well. But I always feel like questions are not a bad thing. Questions are how
Mhm.
people learn and you gain knowledge, so then you aren't bigoted. Um,
Mhm.
but as a question asker, because I did totally ask you questions at the beginning here, even though
Yeah.
you're on a podcast, so you're expecting that. But
Yeah.
I hope that when I'm asking questions or when anyone is asking questions, it is to gain knowledge and not to be mean.
Definitely. Yeah, as long as it's coming from a genuine place of curiosity, I think, yeah, I don't mind at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those listening, if you don't know something, ask. Because that's the only way that you're going to eventually have that information is
Oh, so
if you
sorry.
ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry. My dog is
Oh,
barking.
I can't even hear it.
Okay, good.
But hold up. You did not say you had a dog when I said, tell me about yourself. So
I know.
rewind. Tell me about yourself. That includes having a puppy.
Yes, he's adorable. He's 10 years old. His name is Clarence. My dad named him after Clarence Clemens of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. Yeah, he's a cutie. He's a poodle. Yeah.
Aw, I love
Yeah.
puppies. I have puppies. I have kitties, and that
Oh.
is I could probably have a whole podcast on it. So I'm gonna try not to get too distracted. But
Yeah.
no worries if the puppy wants to come and say hello. So let's talk about you were saying that you're a big mental health advocate, obviously.
Mm.
That's why
Yeah.
you're coming here. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that. Start your story wherever makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, I've kind of been struggling with my mental health since I was quite young. I think around 6 or 7. My parents got me some, professional help for my anxiety because it was getting quite severe. Yeah, that's kind of where I first got introduced to kind of like the mental health system and getting diagnosed and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it started, and then over the years, around 10 or 11, I started dealing with like suicidal ideation. So got some help around there, and then there was like quite a big gap until I was in my late teens, and then got diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I guess re-diagnosed with anxiety. And then that was where I kind of, really started getting help in a bigger sense. Yeah.
Okay, so it was great that your parents sought help for you. Did you ask for it? Did they notice something?
I don't think I asked for it. I think it was quite, noticeable that I was struggling really, really bad with anxiety, just around like safety and stuff like that. So I think it was getting to the point where like they were struggling to deal with it as parents and didn't really know, how to deal with it. So I think that's why they ended up getting me some professional help. Yeah.
That's amazing to hear because, I've been that parent that went, I have no idea how to help my kid right now. And so
Mhm.
you want to seek help. But
Mhm.
again, talking about that stigma back way when parents didn't want to go get help because that meant that they were bad parents because they couldn't solve the problem. So I love
Right.
that you brought up the point that your parents were able to that they didn't have an ego really,
Yeah.
right? And we're able to say what is best for my kid right now. That's to go
Mhm.
and get them other help beyond us.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So to the parents that are listening, it doesn't mean that you're lacking something in your parenting skills.
Right.
It just means that they need something different that you don't have in your toolbox, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So kudos to your parents. We're liking them.
Yes.
And so you said late teens is when you were struggling again and you went back.
Mhm.
So take us from there.
Yeah, by the time I was around 17, 18, things had gotten pretty severe with the suicidal ideation. I was pretty much suicidal on a daily basis. It was very intense. I think the breaking point for me was, I was just struggling a lot. I think I called a crisis line, and, I guess whatever the crisis line worker was like, I'm going to call an ambulance. Like, I'm very concerned about you. And then they took me in an ambulance to the nearest hospital when I was living back in Toronto. And that was kind of where I really started, I guess, my more intense recovery journey. And was hospitalized many times as an inpatient at that same hospital. And that's where they kind of started figuring out the medications. I was already on meds when I got admitted, but they weren't working. So that's where they really played around with the meds, tried different things, different, therapeutic approaches. And that was kind of where I really started my more intense recovery journey. Yeah.
Okay. And again, you're bringing up so many good points. Excellent.
Yeah.
The medication. This is definitely a topic that has come up a lot on the show. I'm going to say probably 95% of episodes.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a trial and error type of thing. There is no one specific cure-all pill for mental health, and it is kind of playing around and figuring it out, which can be quite daunting. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's not working and you're continuing to have suicidal ideation. Like that's,
Right.
I'm taking these pills and it's not working. So for me, anyways, and you can let me know if this is accurate for you, I would be thinking, well, there's something even more wrong with me because I'm the
Yeah.
issue that they're not working.
Right. Totally. Yeah, it's so easy to like personalize this kind of stuff. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what it is. It's just that there are a variety of medications out there. So you got to find the right one and the right dosage, right? You might be on the right medication, but not the right dosage.
100%. There's so many variables. Yeah.
So that's awesome that you were able to get that help and that crisis worker, because generally crisis workers, they're volunteers. There's
Mm-hmm.
not too many of them that are paid. There's obviously a handful management that have to keep the place going, but as a volunteer, that is a very scary thing, to be on the phone with somebody who is talking about suicide and deciding whether or not to make that call to get an ambulance or to say, okay, I think you'll be okay. That's got to be tough. So you got a really awesome person there. And my
Perfect.
cats have crept in. I guess I did not
Oh,
shut my door well enough. They are,
wow.
yes, they're adorable, but they are also little terrors. So they may knock the camera over. Who knows what's gonna happen?
Oh.
It's fun. Um, but yeah, so that's awesome. So with your, and you said that you were in and out of the inpatient a few times.
Yeah,
Um,
many times. Yeah.
and how was your experience while you were there?
Inpatient, like I don't want to deter people from inpatient, but I can find it like traumatizing at times, especially when you're in the crisis area. There's a lot of folks dealing with different levels of mental health, and it can be a little distressing if there's people, for example, if you're dealing with stuff that's more, you might be turning more inward, but then there's other people who might have more like outward symptoms where they're screaming or banging on walls. Like, no hate to them. It's just, it can be a little stressful at times. So if you're like can get overstimulated easily and stuff. So that I found can be a little difficult, but once you're actually on the inpatient unit, like I did have a lot of really good experiences with the nurses and doctors there. They made a big difference in my recovery. And yeah, I think it's about getting on the right inpatient unit as well. Like the hospital I was staying at, they have kind of a more like quote unquote intense unit and then a more like short stay unit. So I would usually be on more like the short stay unit,
Okay.
which is people who would be there for like, yeah, just maybe a few days, maybe a week at most, and just kind of get you back on your feet sort of thing. So I found that quite helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always that fine line when you're talking about it, right? Like you said, you don't want to deter people, but everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, that people can be outwardly, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. Reminds me that you have anxiety, right? So that's gotta really put a lot of pressure on the anxiety part of it when all of these other noises and loudness is going on. But
Yeah.
and when you're not in the best frame of mind, it can be hard to go, okay, well, they're just struggling too,
Right.
right? Because that's all it is they're having a struggle just as much as you are. It's just like
Of
you said, it's
course.
coming out in a different way.
Yeah, yeah, no, like totally understand. They need to express themselves the way that they need to, but it just, I get very overstimulated easily. So sometimes the noise can just be, yeah, a little overstimulating. Yeah.
And here is our guest, our extra special guest, Mr. Friggy. Um,
Oh, what a cute name.
he was actually found in a hoarder's house in a fridge. So
Oh my
he was
gosh.
named Mr. Fridge.
Oh my goodness. That's
Yeah.
adorable.
When I saw his story at the Humane Society, I was like, he has to come home with us. Yeah.
Oh,
Apparently he smelled my tea, did not want it. So
oh
yay,
no.
there's no cat licks in there because ew.
Oh, good.
But so yeah, that's amazing. So once you came out of the inpatient, where did you go? You were on the correct medication by then, like by the last stay.
Yeah, the stays were kind of very frequent over several years, so kind of depends which stay. But by a few years in, I had found the right medications and the right dosages, and like still playing around with dosages time to time. But yeah, after I'd say several years, it took a lot of trial and error and adding
Mhm.
things and taking things away until I kind of got on the right like cocktail of medications. So yeah, it took a lot of time, and it also took a lot of time to get the right form of therapy as well. That took several years. But yeah, like eventually was able to find these things. Yeah.
Forms of therapy. So what ones have you tried?
Oh, I've tried most of them. I've done a lot of CBT because I have depression and anxiety. That's kind of the go-to.
Mhm.
But I did not honestly find it very helpful. I know it helps a lot of people. It really just didn't work for me because the thing was I didn't know that I had borderline personality disorder as well. Um, so when I got the BPD diagnosis, then I actually started dialectical behavioral therapy, which is more suited for kind of the borderline symptoms, and that made a huge difference for me. So for me, DBT was kind of the game changer. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very similar. I was never diagnosed with the borderline, but I did find DBT to be much more helpful than CBT.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I love you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Um, would you like to say something? Yeah. Okay.
he's like in the mic.
Right? And that is the problem. That's why generally I kick them out, but I guess this door does not shut properly unless you like really push it. And
Mm.
apparently I did not. So that's okay. I love them.
Yeah.
Um, so for those who don't know, CBT, we're saying it is cognitive behavioral therapy, and then DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. Um, tell us a little bit more about your DBT.
Yeah, for me, I mean, there's lots of different aspects of DBT, but the kind of the ones that I've found the most helpful are the mindfulness piece. I was already doing mindfulness before I started DBT, but it really like kind of really made me realize how important it was to like focus on that mindfulness piece, which is they like one of the experts calls it like moment to moment non-judgmental awareness, and that might show
Oh,
up in different ways like maybe meditation or yoga or things like that. And then I also really like there's a DBT principle, opposite action, where you do like in certain situations where maybe your thoughts are not as helpful or urges are not as helpful, you challenge yourself to do the opposite. Like if you're, for example, feeling really depressed and don't want to get out of bed, you might challenge yourself to like get up and maybe just take a quick shower or something like that.
yeah, that's the one that we did a lot of is the bad thoughts and let's do the opposite.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. And then So BPD, borderline personality disorder, we have only had a handful of guests because it's not as widely diagnosed as anxiety, depression, PTSD. So
Yes.
tell us, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, again, there's a lot of different aspects of borderline, but for me, it shows up as really intense emotional. I don't know how to explain, like not outbursts, but really intense emotional periods where, I might get really, really suicidal very quickly. I might get really, upset really quickly, like crying a lot, things like that. It also shows up as a really intense fear of rejection, any form of rejection. It could be perceived or, real. It might not be real at all. It might be your friend doesn't text you back and it's been quite a while and you're thinking they don't even want to be my friend anymore. In reality, they're just busy, right? Like things like that will show up. So yeah, for me, really intense emotional periods, suicidal ideation, again, like I've mentioned. And then, yeah, the really intense fear of rejection.
Yeah, and that intense fear of rejection is one of the big parts of borderline from what I've
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. And so what therapy has worked best for you with helping with that one?
The DBT for sure. DBT was originally created for borderline personality disorder or for people who were specifically very suicidal. The woman who actually created DBT, Marsha Linehan, is I don't know if she meets the criteria anymore, but she used to have borderline personality disorder. She grew up, kind of in and out of hospitals and, kind of things like that, and is now, really acclaimed doctor and researcher and clinician and things like that. So yeah, that therapy has helped me a ton. Yeah.
That is amazing. I didn't know that about her. So that's pretty cool. And I do like
Yeah.
that you mentioned you don't know if she fits the criteria because I was just having a conversation with somebody last
Mhm.
week whose therapist told them, that BPD is, I don't know if this is the exact words the therapist said, but this is paraphrasing the paraphrase, that
Mhm.
BPD is reversible. Like it's something that you can maybe more manage is the better word, but come to a point where because with the DSM-5, with our diagnostical criteria that therapists use to diagnose, there are certain
Mhm.
points that you have to kind of check off. And so if
Mhm.
you've gone to therapy and you no longer maybe just an example, maybe you no longer have such a huge rejection issue,
Right.
um, maybe then you don't fit the criteria for that diagnosis anymore, for that specific label. So that was a really interesting conversation I had with the person last week. And I just thought it was funny
Mhm.
that you said that when I had literally just had that conversation a week ago. So it's funny how life works. I need to put the lid on my tea
Totally.
or I'm gonna have fur all up in her.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, I have more visitors on the ground. I have 4 cats total.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
I
Aw.
think there's 3 of them in here right now. So I'm gonna cover my tea back up. I was trying to cool it down, so I took the lid off, but I'm gonna cover it back
Yeah.
up. Um, so how old were you when you were diagnosed with borderline?
I don't know exactly, but it was in like my early 20s. I'm like 28 now. So
Okay.
I'd say maybe like, yeah, maybe like 21, 22-ish. Yeah.
Okay. So 6 to 8 years ish.
Yeah, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that borderline is one of the types of diagnoses that they don't like to do too early. It is one
Yeah.
that is more um, young adult is more when it tends to be diagnosed.
Yeah,
So,
even the psychiatrist who diagnosed me, I think she gave me the diagnosis of traits at first because she didn't want to give me that full diagnosis because yeah, sometimes the symptoms can overlap with adolescence.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, I think they gave me that diagnosis at first, but it did turn into like a full diagnosis. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's so important that we talk about that because I don't think we've talked about it too much was is that you know, when we're going through adolescence, we do have rejection issues, right? Like
Mhm.
100%. It's normal to be like, because you don't know the world very well yet. You're finding your place in the world. You're trying to figure out who you are as a person, who your real friends are, what a
Mhm.
relationship actually is, like with a significant other. So outbursts are normal. Our hormones are going crazy at the time. So it is important to note that, you know, it could just be a normal adolescent thing. Doesn't mean you can't take your adolescent to therapy. Trust me, I've taken
Yeah.
my adolescence there. Because in order for them to still work through that, they might need that extra help. Even though it is a normal part of growing up, it doesn't mean that
Yeah,
they don't also need someone to talk to about it.
definitely.
Sometimes talking to your parent, they'd rather not.
Yeah, yeah. Having that objective third party makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Exactly. So I like that your therapist took the time, and so there's traits of let's keep talking, let's keep doing our thing, and then going from there. Since you are in my same area, I wanted to
Mm.
ask you, because I don't usually get the chance to ask this question. How have you found the mental health field around here? Your experiences with it?
Um, it's been decent. I'm from Toronto, and I'd say that in Toronto, it's a little bit less personable or personal. Like I think when I moved to Niagara, I noticed like a little bit of like people would do extra things. Like for example, if I was admitted to the hospital, they would follow up on me after I was discharged. Like they would give me a follow up call and be like, "Hey, we're checking in on you. Can we do it like a discharge, like a post discharge kind of session or whatever over the phone?" Yeah, and oh, sorry. Are you still there?
This is why he's not allowed in here. He totally just took me out. All right. So
Oh no.
silly kitty. Um, so I caught that they would do a follow-up discharge. So they don't do that in Toronto?
No, I think because they have so many people, I guess, like they probably don't have the time. So that was something I noticed. Like I was like, oh, that's nice. It's kind of like an extra nice thing
Yeah.
that they do. I think also like the waiting lists around here, I find are maybe not quite as bad as Toronto. Still, obviously not great. I think like our healthcare system definitely needs work in terms of mental health and everything. But yeah, it's been decent. Like I wouldn't say it's horrible. Yeah.
Trying to keep him away from my keyboard. At least he didn't take me all the way out this time.
Yes, there's just a
Um,
second.
so okay, well that's interesting to hear because I grew up in Niagara, I lived here the whole time.
Mhm.
Um, so it's interesting to hear how Toronto, which for those who don't know, Toronto is about I'd say an hour and a half from here. Without traffic. And
Yeah.
so that short distance away, it sounds like makes a pretty big difference. Um,
Mhm.
I haven't had a lot of experience with the adult mental health system here. I just used our work benefits and went straight to a therapist, so I didn't have a lot of that. But I do
Mhm.
have a lot of experience with the kids
Mhm.
and our children's mental health. And so for that here, um, the wait list to get into it's called Pathstone, and
Mhm.
it's our Niagara Children's Mental Health place. The
Mhm.
wait list for that uh, is about a year-ish or more,
Mhm. Mhm.
depending. And so that can be very frustrating as a parent.
Sure.
um, but we are lucky here because in Hamilton is between Niagara and Toronto, just to give
Mhm.
some context to everyone else.
Yeah.
Um, that is where our children's hospital is, and so that is where they
Mhm.
would send the kids for inpatient. And
Okay.
it's a very nice hospital there. They have, because it is a children's hospital, there is the Ronald McDonald Room for families. They've got like board games and stuff you can hang out in. They have these
Cool.
little like in the hospital, they have these little areas that are like playgrounds. So the
Oh,
kids can go and
cool.
play, right? So it's a pretty nice hospital. I think we had a lot of good experiences with that hospital. Not all of them were great. Like not all staff members were awesome, but that's gonna
Mhm.
happen.
For
Um,
sure.
so it's pretty. I think as much as I think that we definitely need a big overhaul of our health system,
Yeah.
it sounds like we are fairly lucky to have what we have here, um, on the path to what we actually need. I think
Mhm.
there's still room to grow.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, a lot of room to go. Yeah.
And here's our other guest, Kitty. This is Black Cat.
Oh, oh.
She was on the floor. I was petting her, but she has finally come up here to visit. She doesn't tend
Adorable.
to she doesn't tend to rub the same way as Mr. Fridge does and kick me out. Sometimes
Oh,
she's
good.
allowed in here. Uh, so how has your experience been with, I was gonna say coming out, but that will have a different meaning to you. But with coming out with your
Mhm.
mental health, like talking about your mental health, how has that experience been?
It's been very helpful. I mean, obviously, there are instances where you will experience stigma, but I'd say largely it's been a positive experience, especially when it's been tied to my writing. For example, if I'm doing like a poetry reading and, I'm reading a lot of stuff about my experiences with mental health, a lot of the times folks will come up to me after the reading and kind of share their journeys and what they've been through. So it's been like a really cool, kind of like collective healing experience of, speaking to other people about what their journeys look like and what they're struggling with. And yeah, it's been really, really cool, especially tied to the writing.
Awesome. So, speaking of writing, tell us
Yeah.
what you've written.
Yeah, so I've written two books with Grey Borders Books here in Niagara. First one was a chapbook called Tulips, very short, kind of a lot of mental health content. And then the second one is called Using a Spoon as a Knife. And that one is also a lot of mental health focus, but also some kind of, romantic or sexual themes as well and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I've written so far.
I like the name, Using a Spoon as a Knife. It's very memorable.
Yeah.
So where do people pick up their copies of these books?
I believe you can get them still through Grey Borders site. I think they have like it's called PayHip. So you just go to Grey Borders, I believe it's .com, Grey with an E. But also if you search them on Amazon, you can find them on Amazon. Yeah.
Perfect. And where do people follow you?
So you can find my website at mercedeskilleen.com. So it's Mercedes like the car and then KILLEEN.com. And then on Instagram, I'm at poetry.and.marketing.
Okay, very nice. Any last words that you have to share with the audience?
Um, I think, if you're struggling with your mental health, you know, don't be afraid to either accept the help that's being offered to you or to reach out for that help that you need. It'll help really open up your life and kind of help you get on that path to recovery. And then, yeah, if you're already on that journey, it can be really powerful to speak up about it, or just even just in your circle, your social circle, to speak with your friends about it. Just helping reduce that stigma is huge.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. Um,
Yeah.
enjoy the snow.
Thank you. You too.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.